Shall we?
Yeah.
Okay. So, hi everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Nice. So, today we are going to talk about unit and API testing using Jasmine. So, before we proceed any further, let me introduce myself. My name is Andrei Surzhan. I work as a quality assurance engineer at FarmCrate Mid-America. So it's a local company that serves agriculture industry in 4 states, Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana, and Ohio. So I work as a QA for more than 4 years, and I'm very passionate about test automation stuff, like quality assurance in general and development as well. So I kind of, my hobby is like web development, so I've got home project that I'm working on. It's a full JavaScript stack. This is pretty much it. So my favorite love song is, I think it's Scorpions' Still Loving You. It's a good one. So
Gully by Luna, that's my favorite.
nice. So let's do the following. You can, if you have got any questions during the presentation or during the coding session, just raise your hand and feel free to interrupt me and bug me and so on and so forth. If I start mumbling, you can also raise your hand and ask me to speak up, because I will. So let's take a look at the plan. The plan for today is the following. We are going to create simple Node.js application, then write our unit tests to cover the methods that we will write. Then we will customize Jasmine to make it as a project library, so that will allow us to write custom matchers and custom reporters to be able to kind of make it flexible and customizable. We will take a look at what spies are, and I think if we have time, we'll make a simple web service using Express.js and try to cover web API with tests using Jasmine as well. And the last like bonus part is we will see how we can run our unit and API tests on Git commit. So what actually Jasmine is? Jasmine is a behavioral driven development framework to test JavaScript code. So what actually behavioral driven development framework means? So it's a testing framework that allows you to write tests in kind of descriptive way, which allows you to understand what system does or system components do, not only from developer's perspective but from the user's perspective. Once we start like writing our first unit tests, it will be a little bit clearer. Does anyone know what actually BDD or BDT is? No?
Be something driven development?
Yes, it's behavior driven development.
Oh.
Again, it's like it has a little bit difference from just conventional way of writing unit tests, but at some point, even from developer's perspective, it's even more handy, because when you write tests in BDD way, it makes sense to you what you are working on, like and what actually you're doing that for and for whom. Okay. Oops, sorry, spoiler. Actually, I was struggling. I got a short story to tell. I was struggling with the idea for kind of small app for that presentation that we can cover with unit tests, and I wanted to have something that helps, that kind of supposed to help me to solve daily basis problems. And one of the ideas was to come up with the converter that converts metrical measurement system into imperial measurement system, because it was so confusing when we moved to United States to convert kilometers into miles, convert speed, convert weight, convert especially temperature. So I decided to come up with the idea to write a converter for the temperature. So possibility to convert Fahrenheit into Celsius and backwards. This is like exactly how we felt when we just moved to United States. Oh, not everyone sees it, right? Well, we didn't actually. It's a joke. I think it's time to start coding. Do you guys have any questions so far?
What do you recommend we use to write the code?
To what? To do what?
Does it really matter what we use to write the code?
It's like IDE,
Huh?
IDE, WebStorm, or like Sublime, not plus plus.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. I think
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Code.
If this is what you meant, right?
Yeah. Just what environment should I?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I've been using Visual Studio Code, and actually I switch from WebStorm, and I don't regret. I like it very much. It's
The code?
Visual Studio Code. It's like light version of Visual Studio.
Yeah.
Maybe it's even a completely different product. So let's start from creating empty project and defining the structure. So our project will be called Jasmine unit tests, right? And this is like our empty folder for it. I think we can switch to our IDE and open up the folder.
Is there any dependencies besides Node?
Yes, we will have Jasmine, and we'll have Express.js, and to be able to test Web API, we will use request Node.js module. It's kind of handy wrapper around build like native HTTP Node.js module. So this is like our root folder. Let's create a src folder where we'll put our source code, and the first file that we are going to create will be converter utility. Maybe down the road we will create converter methods for speed and distance. Well, we are not doing that today, but if someone would like to fork that repository in GitHub, feel free to extend it. So in that file, we'll create three methods. One is gonna be two Fahrenheits. The second one will be 2 Celsius, and the third one, the third one will be converting temperature. That will be using those two methods to convert temperature into appropriate units. So let's start from exporting our module. And let's define first method to so with this method we'll take two arguments. First one is temperature or value. Let's do temperature. And precision. With default value like 1. Let's create another one. So second method will match the first one. Well, I will be typing slowly, and sometimes I will be cheating and copy and pasting from existing project because I underestimated myself, and I thought we kind of going to make it, but after several rehearsals I realized that we are not going to make it in time.
Do you want me to tell you if there's a spelling error?
Yes, please. Definitely correct me if you see anything.
I understand phonetically it seems like that, but it's CIS in the middle.
C
Pracis.
C I. Right, that like that.
Yeah, like
Okay, I'm sorry.
precise is related
Yes,
to precise.
perfect. Thank you. So in the second, in the third one will be convert temperature, which will take temperature object and precision equal 1. So this guy will accepts temperature as an object, and based on the business requirements, this method should take an object which has one property, whether it's Celsius or Fahrenheit, and add a new property, the opposite one, whether it's Celsius or Fahrenheit, with appropriate converted value. So for instance, if we're passing in temperature with Celsius, which has like 0 value, which the output of that method should be Celsius with this 0 value, and the second property should be Fahrenheit, like with 32 degrees. So to be able to do that, we need to have two if statements. And we were checking whether temperature has its own property as Celsius or Fahrenheit, and doesn't have. If it doesn't have like Celsius or Fahrenheit, do the conversion and add a new property with the value. Well, and let's check whether it has Fahrenheit and doesn't have. Oh man. It doesn't have Celsius, right? So in that case, we would like to say temperature Celsius equal to, and call this to Celsius method, passing temperature Fahrenheit. Does it make sense so far? Okay, so we would like to have another if statement that kind of does the same but the opposite thing. Okay. And eventually we would like to return the object. Oh man. Right. So I will cheat and take a look at the formulas because I don't remember them by heart. And it's gonna be for Celsius to Fahrenheit. So it's gonna be like that. Our temperature. And we would like to, use precision. So for in that case, it's gonna be to fixed, and we'll pass precision here. And since to fix fixed return string, we would like to parse the string into integer, right? Into float. Parse float, and that's how we get the value, not a numeric value with desired precision, right? Let's return. Let's do return here, and I will cheat. No. Oh yes. Well, okay. I will. Sometimes I will. I'm stuck with something, so I will be cheating because we don't want to lose time on debugging stuff. Okay. Oh, actually, it's the same. Damn it.
Change value to temperature.
Yes, thank you. So our kind of method is ready, and at that point we got our methods written, and they're ready to test. So to be able to use Jasmine, it's super easy to install and start using it right away. So before we proceed any further, let's make our project to use and utilize npm. To be able to do that, we need to create package JSON to be able to define the project dependencies, and to be able to initialize npm in the project. It's one line command, npm init. So it will ask us several questions. What's the package name, version, description, entry point, test command, git repository. We will skip everything and make everything like default. So it creates package JSON for us, and we can add dependencies to the project, and we'll be able to install them at any point of time. So let's install Jasmine. So there are two commands, npm. We need to install Jasmine into global space and install Jasmine locally. Npm install globally, and npm install locally as a development dependency. Oops, misspelled it again. So let me know if you don't see the commands. I can switch to terminal. It's going to be the same, but
I'm a little confused.
more visible.
You're using D. I haven't seen that switch. I usually do the -- save.
Yeah, that's like a shortcut for it.
Oh, okay. But why is there D is a short key for save?
Yes.
Okay.
So if we take a look at package JSON, we've got our Jasmine installed under dev dependencies.
D is a shortcut for save dev.
Yes, save dev.
And S is a shortcut for save.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. What's the difference between the two?
There's no difference. It's just a shortcut. Oh, between save and
save dev. Have I lost anything?
So if you
save?
if you say just save, it will save the dependency under just under the dependencies, and it's like project dependencies. If you say save dev save, so it will install dependency under dev dependencies, and that means it's kind of not part of the project. So in our case, we don't want to have Jasmine to be we don't want to have Jasmine to be part of the project dependencies.
Oh, only in like a dev folder.
Yes.
While we're testing it.
Yes, because it's for
deployed.
yeah, perfect. When you deploy, you don't want to have that dependency like go into the build.
Well, can you tell me a way that I can back that out? I mean, without having to, like, at the command line rather than going into the package, is there a way to back that out and then do a save dev or dev save, whatever it is?
I'm not sure what that I
Well, I've already
understand the question.
installed with save. Can
Uh-huh.
I undo that?
Yes, you can.
Uninstall and reinstall.
So what? We'll just
So do it.
just
Yeah,
npm uninstall.
So if you do npm
So just
uninstall,
uninstall Jasmine. Now we'll-
yes, if you do like that, and we will take a look at the package.json, you will see that the dev dependencies are empty. Yeah.
Okay, and now I'll try to do it. What's the long form of D?
Dash dash dev dash save.
Dev dash save. Okay, I'll remember the D, but I want to do this so I remember this part too.
So if we do
Make sure that.
that, it's like equal to dash D.
Okay.
And if we take a look at the package.json, it's there.
It's back.
Hmm? Yeah, it's back. So as I mentioned, to be able to use Jasmine like right away out of box, it's super easy. Since we got Jasmine installed globally, we have access to the Jasmine as a command line command, and to be able to integrate Jasmine in our project, we just need to say Jasmine init. So it's like the same as npm, and Jasmine will create so if we switch back to our if we switch back to our project, we will be able to see that Jasmine created a new folder for us. It's called spec, and under the spec folder we've got support folder which has jasmine.json. So jasmine.json, it's like config file that JSON consumes, and with that config file you can customize your tests. So in our case, we've got spec.d directory which is spec in the root folder, and this is the parent for the file names. So basically Jasmine will figure out whether it's test file and execute that file as a test file if the file has spec suffix at the end of the file name. So helpers it's JavaScript files or JavaScript modules that will be run before the Jasmine starts running tests. And basically another property, it stops spec on expectation failure. It says if there is one failure in the first test, just stop the whole test run. We don't want that, and we don't want to run specs randomly. Just make it false for now. So at that point we are good to go and start creating our first tests. And let's create the first one. Converter utility spec.json. Let's import our converter utility. So it's gonna be our converter require. We would like to move a little bit up and say, hey, give us a converter. So in Jasmine there are two major functions that allow you to structurize your tests. One of them is called describe, another one is called it. So basically describe helps you to group the tests, and it's a test itself. So let's create the high-level describe block. So the structure is the following. You got describe. The first argument of the describe block is string, where we will have a description for our group of tests. In our case, it's gonna be unit tests for converter converter utility, and that describe block can have nested describe. And in our case, I think it would be nice to have other two describe blocks, one for group of unit tests for convert temperature method, and the second block for 2 Fahrenheit and 2 Celsius. So this guy will be for unit tests for convert temperature, and the second guy will be unit tests for 2 Celsius and 2 Fahrenheit. So as I mentioned before, to be able to define your tests, we are going to use it function. The structure is pretty much the same. You got the first argument for describing test, and the second argument is our like callback function that will have the test body itself. So usually the format is the following. This is like where behavior-driven testing approach takes the place. We are describing our tests in human readable way. So it's not like just name for the test function which describes the unit test, but we can be more specific. We can be more specific in description here, and we can make it more user-friendly. And basically, sometimes it even helps for developers to understand what actually we're developing and what we are developing that for and for whom, right? So in our case, it's gonna be should convert Fahrenheit to Celsius using convert temperature method, right? So we would like to have the second test. Why do we need to have two tests for that method?
Because you pass there's two different conditions.
Yes, perfect. So we've got two kind of branches, right? Two paths in the method. That's another important part in writing unit tests. So probably at some point you would like to cover all of the paths that you have in your method. So that's why when you write methods, you need to kind of think in advance about like the method structure, about the method design, or about the class design to be able to cover that class or method with the unit tests. So the second test is gonna be the same, but we're converting Celsius into Fahrenheit. And the same thing for the rest of the methods in converter utility. So using two Fahrenheit and two Celsius, right? So this is like our project test structure. Does it make sense so far? Is it clear? Good.
The IT, is that something test?
So it's like it should do that.
Oh, okay, okay.
So this is what it stands for.
Another one of these quirky JavaScript things I'm always complaining about.
So another thing that I wanted to show you, Jasmine is awesome in the way where you can define some pre-steps, preconditions, post-steps, and post-conditions for every particular thing, like for the whole group, for the whole test run, for single spec, for single test, or single test suite. So in our case, I would like to define before all, actually, yes, so it's gonna be before all method. So it's got a callback function, and that basically everything that we got in callback function will be executed before all of those tests start. So in that case, I would like to define expected value, which I will be using across all of the projects. So it's gonna be this expected, and it's gonna be a kind of temperature object with two properties and appropriate values. One of them is gonna be Celsius 0 and Fahrenheit 32. So it's like we're testing boundary values, because we kind of know that 0 Celsius it's 32 Fahrenheit, and 32 Fahrenheit is 0 Celsius, right?
Question.
Right. Yeah.
You put a G in Fahrenheit.
I put.
That's because in Russian it's Fahrenheit.
Yes, right. And plus, it's really hard to write some code in front of the people. So we define our expect value. Also, let me copy and paste stuff, because it's really cumbersome to type a lot of simple stuff. So I'm going to pass in before each, after each, after all, with console log statement, just in order to be able to see where those methods are executed. So let's take a look. We've got before each. So this method will be executed before each particular test and group of tests. Before all means it's gonna be executed after all of the tests, and after each it's gonna be executed after each test. Each test, yes. So, but those methods are kind of so basically they exist only in scope of that specific JavaScript file. So if we have other file with Jasmine tests, those before each and before all just won't be executed for the second spec. So just to be on the same page, if we have one JavaScript file with a group of tests, it's called spec. Test suite is describe block, and test itself, it's it statement, and everything that's inside of the it statement, it's it function. So let's try to test our stuff, and I will cheat here. Nope. So let's take a look. We've got our converter, which we imported previously. We are calling convert temperature and passing object with one property Celsius. In the output is gonna be object with Celsius and appropriate value, and Fahrenheit property with appropriate value. So we would like Jasmine provides us with a number of different assertions, and to be able to utilize assertions, you need to call function expect, pass expected value, pass actual value, and call some kind of assertion that we would like to validate against. In our case, we would like to make sure that, hey, our converter actually returns something. In that case, we're calling to be truly method. And the second assertion is gonna be to be, oh no, I'm running like in front of the cart, right? I jumped the gun. So let's do another expect with value, and we say Celsius exists, and it should be to be this expected Celsius, and we would like to check the same thing for Fahrenheit. So I think we can try and do our first test run and see how it goes. So I guess let me do this. Does everyone see it? Okay. So we just do Jasmine. And okay. Has own property. I misspelled has own property. I need to go back to our source file and fix that thing. So has own property. I'm going to save it. Let's try once again. And failure again. But so what do we see so far? We've got our Jasmine and it started. We've got before all executed, then after each, then before each. So what does it mean? Because we have a global describe block, it executes after each for that global describe block. Then it goes before each, after each for next describe block, before each, after each for no, actually it's for the test. So we've got 4 tests, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and after all. So if I'm not mistaken, let's take a look at the. All right, I don't have console log for before all, so let's do before all. And let's try to figure out what's going on with that guy. So we got Celsius because it's expected, not expect.
Yeah, I'm getting an error on mine. I don't know what I've done. It's saying it can't find the
So
required.
we were able to run our tests without any issues. Do you need to take a break or make a pause?
Well, I'm just, it's saying that it can't find the required file, the converter utility file. And I thought I did everything the way you.
Did you put exports with an S?
I can check that. That's a good thing to check.
So-
I did it with an S. Hold on, I got a little light bulb.
Well, let's do the following. I'm kind of afraid that we're not going to make it in time.
Yeah.
So we can kind of discuss it like afterwards maybe.
Yeah, it's no big deal.
And plus repository is in the GitHub. I will share the link in meetup comments. So let's take a look once again at the test run. We've got before all, before each for the first test, before each and after each for the second one, third one, fourth, and after all when everything is run. So at that point we wrote our first unit tests and we written our first unit test. Let's do the same thing for the rest of the methods. So we would like to do here Fahrenheit, and it's like 32, and in our case we are checking whether the value is there. Celsius to be Celsius, and Fahrenheit to be expected Fahrenheit from here. So please note that I'm using this statement, this kind of keyword literal. In our case, if we're using this statement in before all or in describe block, so scope will be so this is gonna be scoped for the whole global describe. Everything that you have in global describe block will be included into this object or this scope. So if you say another this, you can kind of reuse it in tests. That's how you can share the data, or you can pass some kind of expected data in your tests. Does it make sense? Okay.
Could I ask you one question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I resolved that other error, but could I see your converter utility JS?
Yeah,
file?
sure.
Just the top of it.
So we've got module exports, and we are exporting the object which has 3 methods.
This all makes sense. I just, for some reason, it's telling me temperature is not defined. That doesn't sound familiar. I mean, you don't really define it there. You just return it.
No, I'm using the past value and just modify it.
Okay. For some reason, it's complaining on me here.
If
we
you
don't have to resolve it.
yeah, okay. So let's finish up with the rest of the methods. So at that point, we would like to have value equal to actually Fahrenheit. And here we're not passing Celsius, we're just passing the value itself, right? So like to Celsius, we're passing 33, and to Fahrenheit, I'm sorry. We're passing 0 here as a Celsius, and it's should be equal to expected Fahrenheit, which is 32. To Celsius of Fahrenheit, and here is gonna be Celsius. So let's try to run tests. And it failed because, oh yes, so who can tell me why it failed?
0 is considered non-truth.
Yes, correct,
Okay.
right? Perfect. So we probably would like to get rid of that guy. We just don't need it here. And let's try to run it again. Oh, don't see it right. And it passed. So another thing in Jasmine you can do, as you can see, you've got like plenty of useful methods to validate against. Another thing that you can do, you can say there is a proper like object not to be. So it says it's like the opposite thing that we would like to check whether it's not equal to something. Let's try to do that and see how it looks in a test run. And as you can see, it failed because we're checking whether 33 is not to be 32, I'm sorry. Let's fix it. And we're kind of done for the first part of the presentation. So we were able to write our first unit tests using Jasmine, and kind of we've done some validation around the methods. So the next step is gonna be making Jasmine as a project library, and that will help us to customize Jasmine in a way where we can write our custom reports, write our custom matchers, and plus we kind of we can define like steps which will be run like after the whole Jasmine test run is executed, and even before the whole test run starts. So do you have any questions so far? No?
I'm a little confused, but I can't formulate exactly what I'm confused about yet, so I'm just kind of watching and going along.
So I guess what I kind of would like to encourage you guys, when you start development, please think about writing unit tests in advance. That will help you to define the proper structure of your classes and methods. And plus, once you start writing unit tests for what you write. It's like it's awesome way to make sure that you are writing the proper code, and it's like easy to refactor stuff afterwards. You are not afraid of breaking anything, so it's like you're backing yourself up with unit tests. But on other hand, it means that you need to support another piece of the application as well. So to be able to make Jasmine as a project library, we need to create the new file under the spec folder. Let's call it Jasmine. You can call it whatever, but I prefer to call it Jasmine. So in that case, we would like to import Jasmine. As npm module, and say Jasmine new Jasmine. So also we would like to import config to be able to utilize our JSON config.
The path for that Jasmine JS file?
Yes, it's under the spec, so it's like
okay,
yes,
support.
in the root of spec folder.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, spec is in the root of the project. So we've got the following structure. Let's take a look. We've got node modules, spec, src, and package.json and package log.json. So in that case, we would like to import our config file and say Jasmine, please load config. So it's like we are registering our config file, and the last kind of line, it should be execute method, which says please execute all like Jasmine and run all of the tests that we have on the spec folder. So let's make some adjustments in config file. I don't like to have spec folder in the project root. I would like to have tests, and let's rename spec into tests. So another adjustment that we need to make, we probably would like to define a test script in package.json to be able to run our tests with npm command, right? So in that case, it's gonna be test is gonna be a node, because it's a node application, right? Node tests and Jasmine.js. Does it make sense? So why actually we did that? In order to be able to run our tests with here you go. So in order to be able to run our tests as npm command, so if we do npm run tests, yeah, I'm missing. Why? Maybe I didn't save. No, I did. Oh, it's test. Okay. So if we do npm test, as you can see, right now we're running tests using Jasmine as a project library. So it's kind of the same. Jasmine figured out that we have 4 tests, and Jasmine was able to run all our tests like as npm command. Clear? No? You don't need to follow John like during the coding session.
Well, I do want to try to follow as much as I can,
okay.
But I don't want to slow you down.
Yeah. So at that point, we kind of we were able to make Jasmine as a project library, and we right now we can start customizing it. So the first thing that I would like to show you is how to create custom reporter. So Jasmine provides us with the interface, which you can, if you follow that specific interface, you can build custom reporter. You can make it very extensive. You can customize it the way where you can see the whole like test log with how many specs were run, like what kind of failure you had in the tests, where exactly, and you can have test summary, whatever. Usually when you write unit tests, maybe it's not very useful thing, but as an example, at the previous company that I worked for, we used Jasmine to test UI stuff using Selenium. So it's not only for unit tests. This is what I wanted to mention as well. Since Jasmine is just testing framework that helps you to structurize your tests, you can utilize it for every particular layer of your application, to test every layer of your application, whether it's unit layer, whether it's like some kind of integration, web API stuff, whether it's like functional UI layer. You even can test client side, like Angular application. You can test client side separately using Jasmine and Karma, for instance, right? So at the previous company, we used to use Jasmine for writing functional UI tests with Selenium, and we had to write our custom reports to be able to use our like custom logger in reports, and to have very extensive summary of all of the tests, of all of the steps that failed during the test run. So in our case, let's create utils folder where we will create our first custom reporter. So it's like my reporter.json, and I think I'm gonna cheat because it's kind of cumbersome to type everything, and we will just go through the whole file. So let's take a look at the structure first. As I mentioned before, Jasmine provides us with some specific interface, and there are like 6 methods. First one, Jasmine started. It accepts Jasmine test suite info. So basically, with test info, you have access to the test suite stuff like description, full name, number of specs to be executed, and so on. Test suite started, kind of the same thing. The name for the test suite, specs, the name for the spec, and the same like 3 methods for when the spec is done. You got access to the name, and you have access to the failures as well. The same thing for the test suite and when Jasmine is done. So let's take a look at the implementation. So I have only console log because, I mean, it's up to you what kind of logic you need to come up with in Jasmine starter. Maybe you would like to use your own logger to be able to log out some kind of useful stuff with the timestamp and method address. So in our case, we're just doing simple console log statements we would like to have description, because full name has name of the test suite plus name of the spec. Doesn't make sense to me to log this out. So, and for the spec as well. For the spec, it's a little bit so as I mentioned before, you have access to in spec done, you have access to statuses and failed exceptions. So if you have tests which failed with multiple failures, you can have access to all of those failures, and you can log them out separately. So this is kind of what we are going to do under spec done. Test suite is done, and when the whole Jasmine test run is done. Okay. Do you have any questions so far about reporter? Okay.
Can you help me? Is a suite composed of multiple specs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
But yes. So if you have a suite with multiple specs, you will log out the suite name, and then like based on the hierarchy, you have list of specs underneath. We will see with our test run. So in order to be able to register it, it's quite simple. You just say Jasmine add reporter, but we don't have reporter imported, so let's do it first. Const my reporter require and let's import our reporter and let's register it. So in that case, Jasmine will be using our reporter because it takes priority. But before we do that, let's clean up the default one. So for that, there is a method called clean default reporter or something like that. I'm gonna cheat and copy and paste it. So it's clear reporters. So basically, this guide, what it does, it will kind of drop everything, and if we have some stuff that overrides difference. So let's try to run our tests, and as you can see, our tests. Do you see it well? I can switch to the terminal if you like. No, is it okay? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So what we see so far, we've got run 4 specs. It's the very top one. It's I think it's Jasmine starts. Then it goes test suite. We have description for the test suite, since we have. So as I mentioned before, test suite is a describe block. That's why we see test suite here, and it's nested in other test suite with specs within it. Then it goes another test suite with actually it's test suite has been finished. So basically this is the test suite. Then goes another one, and this is the login statement for our global test suite that says the global one is finished. And at the very end of the line, let me run it in command line. Maybe it's gonna be better. So we have npm run test. Still not good, right? Is it better?
Mm-hmm.
So what we have here, we have global test suite, and it finished here. Then goes 2 nested test suites with appropriate with appropriate specs. And at the very end, Jasmine, I think it's Jasmine finished. We have run has been finished, right? So this is how we can utilize custom reporters. So I at my home project, and I don't use custom reporters. I'm using some kind of I'm using custom reporter, but I didn't build it myself from scratch. I'm using some kind of npm module. I will show you what kind of module I'm using, and maybe you would like to use it too. Let's take a look. Let's go back to our IDE, clear this out, and we would like to install npm install It's development dev dependency npm install Jasmine spec reporter. The only caveat is the latest version of the reporter for some reason doesn't work with the latest version of Jasmine. That's why I would encourage you to use version 2.7. So let's install this reporter and use it in our tests. So go back to our Jasmine file, and instead of that guy, we'll just say Jasmine add reporter. Let's import that reporter constant Jasmine spec. Actually, it should be it's a class Jasmine, or call it spec reporter. Require Jasmine spec reporter. Hopefully I didn't misspell it. And here we would like to say, hey, please register that reporter. And if we do our test, I keep hitting L instead of K. If we run our tests, we will be able to see. So that reporter is also customizable. You can customize it. It's got optional arguments to be able to customize it. But usually I'm using it like out of the box, because for my unit tests I don't need to have like timestamp or anything else. It's pretty handy, so it shows you the hierarchy of your tests. As you can see, it has slight the log has slight indent for nested test suites, and plus it has like pre colors. So let's try to fail tests and see how it goes. So the test has been failed, and this is how that kind of report shows failed tests. Pretty neat, right? I don't know what you need else if you are writing unit tests. So, but if you're using Jasmine like in some kind of custom framework that you are utilizing to test UI or web API, probably it makes sense to write something your own. Next step, so let's go back to our tests and see. We at some point we would like to write custom matchers to be able to reduce number of assertions, and in our case this is like a good candidate for it. We've got two kind of identical assertions, and maybe we would like to write custom matcher that will be like checking this object should be equal to expected object, right? So in order to be able to write custom matchers, you kind of approach is pretty much the same as for writing custom reporters. So you do my matcher.js, and in here we'll so Jasmine again provides us with some specific interface how to write custom matchers, and we need to follow it precisely to be able to do that. The way where you can utilize custom matchers as well. So again, at the previous work, we had pretty complex tests, and we were testing web online designer. So we were comparing snapshots of the made like in the browser with expected snapshots. We had three major custom reporters to compare snapshots, to compare PDF files that was the output of the designer itself, and we compared XML, which is also output format of the designer, which kind of was used to build the PDF file itself. So we had very complex custom reporters which checked whether snapshot matches expected one, and if it didn't, we generated diff PNG file with traces where stuff doesn't match to each other. So this is like another use case where you can utilize custom matchers. So the format is the following. You need to import object. Let's do module exports. So this object has a property which is supposed to be your custom matcher. Let's call it to be converted. So this property, this method accepts two arguments. It's utils and custom equality matcher. And I think I will cheat and take a look exactly. So it's custom equality testers, and it's not the plural, singular. So this method, based on the Jasmine interface, should return an object which has one property called compare. Oh, actually it's a function, yes. And this function accepts two parameters. It's actual value, actual, and expected. Expected. So this method should return another object which is supposed to have pass property, and based on that pass property, whether it's false or true, we are failing or like passing the test. So let's return our result, where our result is an object which has one single property. Let's make it true by default. So, and what we would like to compare, we just make a simple assertion. I don't want to go into the weeds too much, and let's create the assertion that just check whether object equal to another object. And in order to be able to do that, we would like to loop through the actual project properties and match actual value in actual object to the expected value in expected project. So again, I don't want to type because it's the most boring thing I think in that presentation. So this is let me walk you through that. We've got actual object, and we're looping through all of the case and comparing if actual value is equal to expected value. We actually don't need to do that part. So we just do that. So we would like to fail the assertion, and we don't need to have else statement. So does make sense so far, right? It's like kind of simple. Questions?
Well, so you're just comparing the actual and the expected.
Yes.
Okay.
So our matcher is ready, and now we can import it in registered. So we are doing it the same way as we did for reporter. So in our case, it's my matcher. And we just, the only difference is we would like to register that matcher for every particular test suite, because as far as I understand, Jasmine doesn't. So basically, we need to make report go into tests with scope to be able to utilize it. So you can do the following: before all, and that's where we can register our matcher for every particular test suite, for every particular test file even. So it's gonna be add matchers, and this is pretty much it. So we need, at that point, we kind of register our matcher, and we can get rid of those two statements and just say to be converted, right? To be converted, we are passing our value, and we are passing our expected value. So let me try to run it. And it passed. So let's try to fail it. So as you can see, our custom assertion failed. Expected object to be converted object. Maybe we can adjust the name better, or make some kind of login statement which describes what kind of problem we were running into, but for our presentation purposes it's not needed. Do you have any questions so far?
Could I see the line where you did the to be converted again?
Yes, so let me fix this part. So again, the interface requires us to have the matcher name, the kind of custom assertion name. Then it takes two arguments, it's util and custom equality testers. So this method should return another the function which accepts, well, yes, which accepts, actually it should return the object. Yes, it returns the object with compare method which accepts actual and expected parameters, and this method should return the result which has pass property. So it's it's just a convention that you need to follow in order to be able to write custom matchers. And you can customize it whenever you want. So as I mentioned before, we had very complex image comparison in here in custom matcher, and we had expected snapshot to be equal or to be equal to actual, and the whole comparison happened inside of the custom matcher. It's it's super powerful.
So it's going through a lot of properties by key. It's looping through, right? So you're iterating. You could do 1,000.
Yes. Yep.
And it's just giving you a fail if one of those fails.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So it sets up result as true, and then if it fails at any point, it jumps out with a false, and then it returns it.
Yeah. So if we are not running into, so if actual, if properties and with values in actual object are equal to all of the properties with values in expected object, we're just skipping this statement and not going into that if statement body. Never. Otherwise, we are going into that and just return result with pass false, which fails the assertion. Right? So we kind of learn how to create custom matchers, custom assertions, utilize Jasmine as a project library. The next step is gonna be, so we can take a look at Spice. It's a very powerful tool that allows you to mock data and check whether some of the methods in the class or in the object have been called during the test execution. So let's go back to our converter utility. Oops. No. Okay. So what we would like to do, let's go back to our tests. We need to make sure in our unit tests for convert temperature, we would like to make sure that this method is calling to Fahrenheit and to Celsius methods in the object. So how we can do that? We can utilize spice in Jasmine. So in order to be able to do that, we just need to say we just need to define spice. And what does it do? I will explain you. So we say spy on that object, and on that specific to Fahrenheit method. And to Celsius. In our case, we would like to spy on Celsius here because we are converting to Celsius in that test, and we would like to spy on 2 Fahrenheit here because we are using 2 Fahrenheit to convert to Fahrenheit, right? So what does it do? It in our case, it just check whether the method has been triggered while executing convert temperature. So it's kind of another way to track whether your class or whether your methods are like using proper methods to be able to execute to be able to just run the application, right? So let's try to run our tests at that point, and it failed because does not exist. Interesting. Why?
You might have spelled it different.
Yeah, might. So we've got converter to Celsius.
Oh yeah, you need an S in that, right? C-E-L-S.
C-E-L-S, right? I think it's correct. So what actually happened? So what spices do? They create, instead of your method that create a spy like object, which so in our case we don't kind of return a value, and our method is not executed and doesn't return a proper value because it's a spy at that point. That's why our test failed actually. So once we do that, we are creating spy instead of that method. So it's not longer the method that returns converted value. It's a spy, which we are using to track whether the method is executed. Does that make sense? So another thing that we probably like to do is to track whether so we would like to mock some data. In that case, since our test failed, we would like to say, hey, let's create spy on that method and let that spy to return some kind of mocked values. In that case, we are making our test independable, and we are mocking stuff which kind of is the basic idea of unit testing. You don't have you don't need to execute some specific task, get the complex values. You're just mocking the values inside of the test. So in order to be able to do that, we just say with or return. I need to take a look at my previous implementation. Yes. So what we need to do is to say and we would like to return the value from that method. So in our case, we would like to pass 0 value because we're checking here, right? Okay, let's try to do the same thing for the second test, and it's gonna be 32. And our test passed because our spy returns some value. So let's make some other adjustments. Let's make 1000. It's gonna be more visible to you guys, and we would like to check. So it's gonna be Celsius 0 and Fahrenheit. What's the value here?
32.
Nope, because we created spy on that method to Celsius. To Fahrenheit. Yeah, this is like a mistake. To Fahrenheit. So in Fahrenheit it's supposed to be equal to what?
32?
Mm-mm.
No.
So we mocked the data that's coming from 2 Fahrenheit method.
We're changing it to 1000?
Yes.
Okay, I'm confused as to what you're doing there.
So basically, we made test isolated from our expected values. So that test is totally isolated. And it doesn't depend on anything that we have in our test suite. So we don't care about expected data anymore. We have our expected data defined in our assertion statement. So in our case, we are passing 0, and we are mocking the value that's coming from 2 Fahrenheit's method. So it's supposed to be 0. It's supposed to be 32, but since we are mocking that method, we are returning with the spy. We are returning 1000. So here's the use case. If you have kind of very complex method that does bunch of calculations and calls like bunch of different methods that call like external APIs from the external third-party system. So you don't want to rely on that third-party system. You would like to make your test independent from that third-party system. That's where you're mocking data. So let's assume that like 2 Fahrenheit gets the data from some kind of external API call from weather.com, for instance, right? So we don't want to rely on weather.com in our tests. We would like to mock the data and just test our method that we wrote. So that's why we are mocking stuff. Let's try to run it. Probably would like to do the same thing for another test, and in our case it's in 32 here. It failed. Does not exist. Nice. Why?
I think it's EFTS.
Where?
On the spy-on converter.
What's the line number?
41. Excuse me.
41. No. You're good.
Is it
Two.
yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's my huge problem. Let's try to run it once again, and all tests passed. Thank you. So we kind of took a look at the spice, yes. So we took a look at the spice, and we just made sure that so we checked whether the method was called, and we were able to mock the data. Let me take a look at something that we're probably missing something. Okay. So another thing that we can assert here is that expect so we can check whether the method has been called. We can do convert to Celsius, and we can do to have been called. So basically this assertion does what I just told you. So that's how we are checking whether method has been called or not. Yes. So this is another way. So basically we are creating spice and checking whether method has been called. Do you have any questions? No? So the last two things are left actually. I will try to make it real quick. So we'll try to create let's assume that we've got new requirements for our application, and new requirements say that we would like to create web API, and with that web API we would like to store weather forecast. So we would like to utilize our converter methods to be able to get some kind of temperature converted into proper units and store it somewhere in database. And also I would like to get one specific single forecast by forecast ID or something. So let's create first of all we would like to create weather controller. Weather control.json. I will copy and paste because I'm pretty sure that you guys are tired. And let's walk this through. So what it does, we've got two methods. One of them is get by ID. Another method is insert. So get by ID is fairly simple one. We have our kind of, let's say it's database access. We'll get our data, and we're checking whether data is an array, and actually it exists. So if it doesn't, we failed. We kind of throw the assertion. We log out the error, and if data exists, we would like to loop through the array and return some specific single value from the array based on the condition. So we've got our ID, and if ID in our array matches, if ID of the element in our array matches to the past ID, we would like to return that element. So fairly simple. The second method is so again, this is our kind of database access layer. We generate new ID. So if you use kind of frameworks like Mongoose, we don't need to do that. Mongoose does it for you. But we're doing it just for training purposes. So we're generating, we are getting forecast, which is object with which is object with two properties, Fahrenheit and Celsius. We're adding probably location as well. we're adding ID to that project and write this forecast object into our database. In our case, it's just weather.json. So let me create that dummy file. So we're going to create data folder, and underneath we're going to create weather.json.
Careful. Yeah, there's an H there.
Really? Thank you guys. It's super helpful. Let's create empty list, empty array. So we generate our ID. We push new forecast into our kind of database, into our object, and we write our object into like our improvised database. So I made this as a promise specifically just to be able to show you how we can test async code in JavaScript, in Jasmine tests. So this is our controller. It's like low level of our web service, and at that point we would like to create the service itself using Express.js. So let's create a new file called server.js, and I will cheat because everyone is tired. So we've got let's install Express.js first. Why it complains all the time? Npm Express.js in our case is part of the application. That's why we would like to install it into app dependencies. So we are saying install save Express. And let's take a look at the package.json. We've got Express installed, and now we can go back to our server file. So we've got Express.js imported. We created an app, and we are importing our weather controller and converter utilities, which we'll be using to convert data, to convert one temperature into another, and like building the object, forecast object, to be able to store it into database. So we've got two major endpoints. One of them is whether it get endpoint with ID as a query parameter, and post endpoint to be able to store our stuff into database. So the post endpoint has like a request body, which will be which are used to get the data from the client side. So let's take a look at the get. So get is fairly simple. We are calling our weather controller and get by ID, which we are getting from the request params, and we are sending the response back that it's 200 and with our data from our database. And the post, we are getting data from the body of the request using temperature property to convert Fahrenheit into Celsius and create additional property. So basically we've got data which has temperature object, which has two major properties, Celsius and Fahrenheit, and then we are using weather controller insert method to be able to insert stuff. Since it's a promise, we are using then statement and send a response back to the client side with our newly inserted object. So the last two statements I kind of importing server to be able to close it and open before the test run. Is it clear? Do you have any questions? It's like it's super basic web service. So let's just start it and try to. So actually we would like probably to add another npm script which says what, like let's do dev and let's do node src server.js. So that's how we can start our server. npm run dev. Probably misspell again something. Cannot find module with a controller.
You put an H in the file name.
What?
Yeah.
You put an H in the weather controller file name.
I did I?
I thought you fixed it, but apparently.
Yes, perfect, thank you. I thought I fixed it too. Okay. So let's run it. Well, the server is up. I just don't have anything to show it. So I'm using Postman. It's another tool to test web API. It's a very handy one, so I would encourage you, if you write backend side and you would like to easily test your web methods, please use Postman. It's an awesome tool. It's super simple and intuitive to use. So I've got two endpoints defined, and we can try to test our methods first. So here's my object in the body request. I've got location. It's Saratov, where the place where we are from. Temperature is our object that we would like to convert. So eventually, what we would like to see, we would like to get that object, convert temperature, add new property which is gonna be Fahrenheit with 32 as a value, and store it into our weather.json file. So let's try to run it. So this that was successful. We got our object back. New ID has been generated. We've got Fahrenheit added and converted. Let's take a look at our database, improvised database. So the new object is there. Probably would like to get it. So if we go back to Postman, we can get that project back. So our endpoints are working, but what we would like to do, we would like to write API auto tests for it. I think the best approach is to create a separate project for test automation, so for testing API, but for training purposes we'll do it in one single project. So I think I will go ahead and cheat again, because we are running out of time and probably again everybody's tired. So I got weather spec. We need to create another file, test file, which we call again weather API spec.json. In this file we'll have two tests. So two tests. One of them, let me at least lay out the structure. So REST API tests for weather, and this guy will have two major tests. It should return, it should get forecast by ID, and another one, it should insert new forecast record to database, right? So we know that our two methods, they are async methods, and how we can test them with Jasmine. So Jasmine provides you possibility to define a function. So you need to pass a function done into all of your tests. So, and what we would like to do, we will call our API endpoints, and once we get the response and validate that response against database or against our expected data, we would like to finish up the test, executing the done function. So in our case, let me define some presettings for the tests. We've got before all statement, which has best URL. So probably at some point we would like to get best URL from the config file, which would be the best approach. But for training purposes, we are hard coding that value, and we've got request body, which has temperature and only one Celsius property. So we kind of we will try to replicate the same test that we just performed in Postman. So in order to be able to test API, we will use request npm module. As I mentioned before, it's like handy wrapper around HTTP like native node module. So we say require request, and then it's super simple. So we need to define resource here and resource right there. Actually, since we need to pass an ID, we would like to do something like that. So I'm going to make tests dependable on each other because we don't have any values. So let me do the following. We are inserting data with that test, getting the ID, and then using that ID to be able to call the just inserted data. Again, like from the test automation perspective, it's not the best thing to do. We would like to make tests isolated from each other, but for training purposes, I mean, we can do it. So first test, we are going to do the following. So let me collapse this part. We are saying, hey, do the post request to base URL, which is localhost with the port. In our case, we are adding resource to our URL. We are passing request body as a JSON, and then once we made the request, we are getting response, and we are getting the body of the response and error. So we would like to check whether error is null, so everything looks good, whether body exists, whether ID exists, whether location is equal to what we just sent to, and Celsius equals to Celsius from the request body and some hard-coded value. In our case, it's like 32 degrees. Once we get the object back, we would like to get an ID and store it into our ID variable to be able to use it in our second test. And the second test will look like that. So basically we are checking the same thing, and I forgot to mention that this is where done is called, and it determines that we need to finish up the test. That's it. So basically there are two possible ways where the test fails, hitting the assertion, or we're reaching done and finish up the test with pass result. So let's try to run all of the tests. And I guess since we don't have so we haven't set up some stuff yet, which we need to, but since we've got running server, we can just say npm run test. Oh yes, so we haven't what we didn't do that we haven't uploaded request library. So we would like to say npm install. It's a development dev dependency install request. So we just install it, and if we take a look at the package.json, it's gonna be there. So we've got express.js as a yeah. So dev has it. I don't know what Jasmine is in here. Okay, so let's try to run tests. npm run test, and it failed because undefined to be 32 and undefined to be 32. Maybe I misspelled something. Maybe. Yes, so it's Fahrenheit and yes, Fahrenheit. Okay. So we what?
Bingo.
Yeah, bingo. So we've got our test executed. Let's make some adjustments. So what we would like to do, we would like to run tests without worry about that the server is up and running. We would like to run the server. Once test pass, we would like to close the server, right? So with Jasmine we can do it easily. As I mentioned before, we have possibility to define helpers. So helpers, it's Java files that will be executed before the very test run. So let's say start server.js. Where is it? No, it hasn't been created. Start server.js. And let me just copy and paste. So we are importing server from the server, and we are closing it if it's running, and we're like starting this up on through 3000 port. Also, we would like to close the server after the test run, right? So Jasmine provides us with nice method that says that's called onComplete. So it accepts callback, and in that callback we can close our server. But first of all, I need to import it. Interesting. I didn't have constant here. Nice. Okay, so I will copy and paste from the already existing code. So what do we do? So this callback accepts the parameter which determines whether the whole test run failed or passed. So if it passed, we just would like to clean up the data, and if it didn't, we just would like to fail the whole Jasmine test run with exit code 1. So and we would like to close the server eventually, no matter what. think it's not needed here. So let's try to close our existing server. Stop it. Let's try to do test run, npm test run, and it passes because we were able to launch the server and close it after the test run. That's why it passed.
On those test runs, did it save it to the database, or did it just like?
Yes. So if we take a look at the JSON, we will be able to see a bunch of new data is written there. So every test run we are seeing new data. We can maybe at some point this is where we can use before or after each on Jasmine on complete to clean up the whole like test stuff, right? One of the use cases. So the last bonus thing I think we are going to make it. The last bonus thing is how to run everything automatically on Git commit. So it's very good. I mean, it's very handy and good practice where you have possibility to run unit tests on Git commit. It's like about the whole quality assurance process in general. That kind of approach allows us to find issues on the most early stages, thus reducing the expenses that we need to spend on fixing bugs. So as earlier you are fixing issues, as less it's gonna cost for you. Like if you are able to find issues on Git commit before you even check stuff in, like before you even commit, you're like reducing effort significantly. But if you're not fixing it on Git commit and it goes into QA environment, like QA people start testing that stuff and find the bugs, QA people return the build back, like everyone gets frustrated and it's like super time consuming because you have to do that kind of huge iteration. So that's why it's kind of, I think it's a good practice to run unit tests whether on Git commit or on build. And I think on running stuff on Git commit is the most earlier stage possible. So in order to be able to do that, it's super simple. We are going to use pre-commit npm package. So let's install npm. It's gonna be dev dependency because we don't want to have pre-commit module in our build eventually, right? So let's say pre-commit library or module. Let's install it. Okay, it's there. And the last thing that we need to do is to define kind of pre-commit hook in our package JSON. Like that. So what it does, please execute test script on Git commit. So we've got our test script, which is script on the scripts. Does that make sense? So I believe if we go, actually, you know what? We forgot to initialize Git in our project. So let's do that. Why it complains on that? So let's do Git init. And our project now has Git like our project has Git repository, or we kind of can utilize Git in our project to be able to commit stuff. So I think if I close that bash and that guy and open up the new one, it will show me the branch. No? Oh, I need to commit first to be able to see the branch. So let's go to project folder and see whether. No, we are not going to. No. So we will go to project folder. Oh man, I don't see a well, never mind. So there is a hidden folder called .git, and if we go to that folder, there is a hooks folder. In that hooks folder, we might find git git pre-commit hook. So if we open up this hook, we will be able to see the, I think it's gonna be bash script, which determines to run all of auto tests or npm script on git commit. Well, probably we don't want to do that. I think this is pretty much it. So let's try to do git commit. So we've got a bunch of stuff, and we don't want to commit our npm modules. So for let's create git ignore file and ignore our node modules. That's it, I believe. So we would like to add everything, and our commit is gonna have, let's do initial commit. Maybe I forgot something. So probably maybe it's not run on initial commit. Let's do another one. Let's do some kind of adjustments. I don't know. Let's remove one plus from here. Let's do git add. Changes. Well, so it's kind of supposed to be on git commit. Probably I'm missing something. So we installed pre-commit, and let's take a look at the package JSON. The test. Interesting. Yeah, if you have if you guys have any ideas, please feel free. No?
Would it be npm run test instead of just normal test?
npm.
So like, I don't know about the pre-commit, but I know
right there.
Yes.
Yeah, it's.
You gotta type the whole thing out.
No, it's supposed to be name of the script that matches one of the scripts, some of the scripts in the scripts object. So let me think. What did I miss?
Do you think it's different maybe if Git is not installed and you don't have your .git folder when you install the package, the module? You know what I'm saying?
Not really. What do you mean?
Like I think what he's saying is like one dependency on the other.
You didn't have the repository initialized.
Yeah, actually I do. As you can see.
No,
when
you install pre-commit.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm wondering if pre-commit
right.
wants to jam something into like the
absolutely correct.
You know, into the
perfect.
into your .git,
yes.
one of the little files in there.
I think this is it. So let's try to.
Maybe uninstall and reinstall.
Yes. Thank you. So we do that, and then install it once again. Okay, let's do git damn it, git status, and let's do git add git commit, update it, package.json. Yay!
Yay! Awesome.
So yeah, and if we fail, let's try to fail it. I as a QA, I have to fail it.
It's your job to break stuff.
No, it's not true. I can. It's my job to break the illusion that
That's
stuff
right,
is working.
of perfection. Yeah.
So yeah, let's make it change. And we couldn't do pre-commit. We couldn't do commit because test failed. So, and it says that it doesn't equal to something.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So let me return it back. Yep. So I think this is pretty much it. I really appreciate, guys, that you kind of managed to do that, to see the whole presentation. For some reason, when I was rehearsing, it wasn't so boring. My wife didn't fall asleep. Not a single
That's
time.
the test.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I don't know why. So it took me a while, and probably maybe I was nervous. Writing the code in front of the people is super challenging. Do you have any questions so far?
Just to recap the last part, like a really code noob. You essentially wrote a script to run every time you wrote git commit. That would set up to automate the unit testing.
Yes.
And if the unit testing failed, git commit doesn't run. Okay.
So you cannot commit. You can run git commit, but it fails because your test failed.
But the commit doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't.
Okay,
Yeah. We can take a look at the actually. Let's do the following. I will show you. Let's make another change.
But you essentially just make sure I understand that you automate the testing on git commit.
Yes.
That's really cool.
So we made some changes. Git status. We made some changes, and we would like to do commit. So let's do git add everything. Git commit and edit new stuff. So, and if we git log, if we take a look at the git log, we don't see that commit. We've got only last one change.
Okay.
Right?
Which is really cool because it means your code never even made it into the
So
reset.
you don't have to recommit and say fix that error.
Yes.
Right.
So yes. So sometimes here's the problem that we're running in the current team. So I kind of implement that thing at my current job, and people started complaining that they cannot do commit because of that stuff. So we don't run unit tests because we write auto tests, so we don't have unit tests, and we don't run auto tests on git commit. They are run by right now it's manual, but down the road it's going to be continuous integration tool. But what we run on git commits is lint. So in case of Python, it's pylint. In case of JavaScript, it's JSLint. So what does it do? Lint checks your code. Lint validates your code against code style, some kind of design stuff, naming conventions, bunch of cool stuff. So I kind of implemented that stuff at the current job, and people got concerned that they cannot commit in time. So I would like to encourage you that you can commit. You just would like to skip git hook at some point. So for instance, it's Friday night, right? You would like to go home, just commit stuff, push it up to your remote branch, don't want to fix it like right away. You would like to fix it maybe on Monday. So what you can do, let me show you. So what you can do, you can say, let's add the thing again. So what you can do, you can say -n, which means just skip all of the hooks and don't do validation at all, and it will commit code as is. So that's it. And if we do git log, we will see that the commit is there, even if your test failed. It doesn't prevent you from committing. This is what I'm saying.
Right.
So you can still have your process in place.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
hopefully it was like something useful.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Well, any questions? Yeah.
Where can we find the GitHub?
Yeah.
Good question. So I will attach the link to the presentation, and actually maybe do we need to presentation? I don't know. I will attach the link to the presentation and to the GitHub repository into comments for the meetup.
Cool.
So
Any other questions? Thanks, Andrei.
yeah, you're welcome. Hopefully I will get some courage and take a look at the video. last presentation was horrible. I can't imagine how horrible it was. I mean, how horrible it is, the current one.
You did great. The video is just the screen